Let's go. He's nice.
Now that's a giant.
Finally happened.
Oh man. Wow. Look at the payoff.
Yeah, buddy. We did it.
Welcome to another episode of Chasing the Dream TV. On this one, we're going to be covering a little bit of plot work in the bullpen food plot, as well as both my 2020 archery bucks. So let's get started on the plot. So back in early April 2020, we went in and broadcast seeded a variety of clover that we got from Calp Forage and Turf in the west corner of the bullpen. In May, we went in and mowed out all the sections of the plot. So right here, we're mowing the borders of the plot for the Egyptian wheat plot screen that we also got from Calp. Next, we outlined the sections that will be planted into beans at the end of the month, and another section for the Wildlife Perfect antler builder, which is mostly a NEBRASKA blend. After leaving the shredded trash to dry for a few days, we came in and disked up the border for the Egyptian wheat and got that seeded. We also set up the platform for the blind that Andy and Neil built. This diagram shows you a little better what we have going on in the bullpen. In the end of May and early June, we had a lot of deer moving back in from their winter ranges and really started hitting the NXT Level Deer Supplements that we had in the clover corner of the bullpen. One buck in particular looked like he was going to be a stud, and he was there at least once a day, almost every single day. This buck quickly turned into a next level addict, and that's where he got the name C2 after our buddies Nate Clark and Scott Christensen, the owners of NXT Level Deer Supplements. We kept close track of him throughout the summer, and in the middle of July I got a close look at him in the plot as I was driving by. On the right is C2, and on the left is a buck some of you may recognize from this season in 2021, a buck we called Bog. After that sighting of C2, I really wanted to try to get some velvet video of him, so a couple nights later I set up a stand on the east side of the bullpen, and to my surprise, C2 was the second deer in the plot that evening.
All right, so we're back up at the ranch. It's early August, getting into phase 2 here of our master plot, our food plot here. Egyptian wheat's coming in, fantastic, looking real good. Soybeans have a real nice stand. Now it's all about the follow through. So now we're putting in our antler builder from Wildlife Perfect. Went and picked up the seed from Calp Forage and Turf there in Norfolk. And right next to it was this new fertilizer. It's an all-natural biological called Soil Shot. Real simple. You buy a 5-pound bag of seed, and then this goes right along with it. So we're gonna go ahead and apply it. It's real simple. All you gotta do is add it with water and just cover the seed, cover the soil. So we're gonna go ahead and get to work here and apply it on our master plot.
With all the work finished throughout summer and finally back after a few weeks hunting in western Nebraska, it's now late September and time to hunt C2. For tonight's sit, I'm gonna go sit in the ground blind in the bullpen. Hopefully get a shot at C2. The beans are turning, they're starting to hit the Nebraskas a little better, so hasn't been there in daylight on the cameras the last couple weeks, but he's been there quite a bit, pretty close to daylight and in the middle of the night, but I'm gonna go give it a shot and see what happens. After watching a bunch of does and younger bucks feed in the plot, this nice young buck that we called Phantom postured up and started walking to the far end of the plot like there was another buck coming in. I was excited to see which buck it was when C2 finally came into view for the first time this season. They fed around in the west end of the plot where most of the deer seemed to be spending most of their time until dark, and C2 never came closer than 80 yards. After several sits in late September from the platform in the middle of the plot and seeing most of the deer feeding on the west side, I decided to take the bail blind in there and set it up in the Egyptian wheat border about midway through the west half of the plot. Well, I came in midday and popped up the bail blind here in the edge of the Egyptian wheat. I cut a little trail out for the exit, and I think I had plenty of wind cover. As you can hear, it's pretty windy, but right in front of me is where it seems like most of the deer, especially the shooter bucks, tend to feed right before dark. So this is where C2 was last night. I would have had a damn good show right here last night if I was sitting right here where the blind is now, but hopefully they come out and don't pay much attention to the blind. After I lost shooting light and was about to pack up, C2 strolled right in close bow range, and fed right by the blind. My next 2 or 3 sits from the bail blind, I watched C2 come out in the exact opposite side of the plot over 150 yards away. So it was time to head back to the platform and try to get a shot at him from there. With the cat and mouse game we'd been playing, I couldn't help but think he was going to show up in the far end of the plot back by the bail blind now that I was on the platform. And as luck would have it, that's exactly what happened. With light fading and having no expectations at getting a shot at him that night, he actually ended up working down the edge of the beans coming my way.
Well, this is the buck I call C2. I finally got him on the ground. I think this is my 7th or 8th encounter with him from the stand, or the blind really. it seems like every time I've seen this guy the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, when I've been in the bail blind on the west end where he originally was coming out a lot, he's been coming out on this east end. So I sat over here thinking that I'd get a better opportunity at him, and then I literally put it on my Instagram story. Now that I'm in the platform blind, he's going to show up on the west end by the bail blind, and I look over there and I've got probably 15 deer in the plot on the east side. I look over to the west side and this guy's standing broadside 25 yards from the bail blind. I knew he was going to do it, and it took him forever to work his way down, but he crossed the fence right about where the camera's sitting, and it took a couple steps quartering away. I ranged him at either 37 or 39, and I don't know what happened on my shot. I'll have to watch the video over. I think I'm good left and right. I don't know if he ducked or if I hit high, but it hit him in like the low part of the spine, and it got the artery, so he dropped down right away. And then I knocked another arrow right away, shot him in the heart the second time. It wasn't really my intentions, but awesome night. Finally came in.
I couldn't have been happier to finally get C2 on the ground on my 9th encounter with him from the bullpen. One major lesson I learned in 2019 and 2020 seasons, after a couple less than ideal shots on bucks, was to try not shooting at them when they're head down feeding, no matter how relaxed they are. After it was explained to me, it made perfect sense. When they're standing there with their head up, no matter how alert they are, if they hear the bow go off, they can only drop as fast as gravity allows them. But if they're head down feeding and they hear the shot, when they pull their head up, they use it as leverage to drop their body and run out of there, which is exactly what happened to me on each of my less than ideal hits. It was definitely a cat and mouse game with C2, and he's probably still the most frustrating buck I've ever hunted, always showing up on the opposite side of the plot from where I'm at that night. But that makes the success that much more special when it's tough hunts like that and you finally get it done. Now let's head to the stand on my very next sit on Halloween morning.
Well, I can't even believe I'm getting to do an interview like this again, but I just freaking smoked my second buck of the season, tagged out with a bow, first time I've ever done that, and before November. Haven't even got to hunt the rut yet. I don't know what I'm gonna do now. I've been looking forward to it so much, but I went to sit in a stand that I hung a few days ago. It's a really good rut pinch point between open CRP and a open hillside, just a little 30-yard gap in the timber that they cruise pretty heavily. But I hung a cell cam over there, and hasn't been getting much for pictures at all, even at night. So I got down there, have the wind for this stand that I'm actually in, and I just stood there by the trail to go to that stand or split off to go to this one, and made the decision. This one is in the thicker timber. It's closer to the food and closer to the bedding rather than cruising between bedding. So I decided to come over here and see what happened. It's actually the first time I've sat this stand this year. I made the last minute decision to come sit in this tree and got in here, bumped a deer. I don't know what it was. On my way in, like 50 yards from the tree, got up, barely got my camera set up at first light, and I heard a buck making a scrape down here at like within 70, I would guess, and it started to get lighter, and I finally saw a body moving towards bedding, so I threw the binos up, saw that it was a good 10 from the side. He started walking off again, so I grabbed the grunt tube, pointed it behind me, made a couple grunts. He stopped and looked around, then he walked a little bit more, but I sniff-wheezed at him once, and he turned on a dime, looked my way, and then he worked his way through the thick stuff. It's not even a shooting lane, it's actually dead downwind. I've got too big a lens on to be able to turn the camera around and point it at me. I can't believe that just freaking happened. I just shot my second bow buck of the season. He's freaking toast. He didn't even go 70 yards. I don't know how he didn't smell me, if my thermals were just hitting the ground below the tree, because once he got close, he started sniffing the air quite a bit. He could definitely smell me then, but he wasn't too spooked. And then he finally turned to go back up towards bedding. I think he was starting to get spooked, but he stopped at, I thought 20. So I aimed for 20, but he was actually like 14 is what I ranged it at. Freaking smoked him. He piled up, sounded like within 75 yards max from the stand, but so freaking excited. I can't believe this even happened. The sun's just coming up. I'm gonna tear everything down and we'll go check him out. I can already see him freaking laying there. Right above my finger. Pour up scrape. There he is. Yeah, that's a pretty good deer. Pretty good deer. Big old freaking tank, mature buck.